What's good, B-Sounds? It's your boy, Kitkin Raid, and today I want to talk a bit about the news and recommend a couple of documentaries to you. So my girlfriend came home the other day and said weightlifting's been dropped from the Olympics, and I was like, oh, well, we kind of expected that to happen. That sucks. And then I looked it up, and that's not true at all. And I'm not saying that she got it wrong. I'm saying that the news sources are bloody unreliable. I had a look around, and the Guardian's article on it did used to say weightlifting dropped, and now it says weightlifting risks being dropped. But Men's Health, their website still says weightlifting dropped. So if you needed another reason to avoid Men's Health like the plague, there's your reason. It wasn't that difficult to figure out that it wasn't true, because you can literally just watch the press release where they're talking about it and they just say it's under threat, the same way it's been under threat forever. Do you know why? No? Let me tell you. Doping has been a problem in weightlifting forever. And now we're getting real good at catching people and retroactively catching people. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, are just fed up of retroactively testing people's urine and then the top 6 or 7 competitors all being stripped of their medals, and then some guy at 7 now has gold but doesn't really get to enjoy having been on the podium. It sort of tars the sport, you know? So they'd like that to stop. There's a really great documentary on Netflix called ICARUS, which is the first of the documentaries I'll recommend to you. It is about the Russian doping scandal, and it's amazing. They've got this like vault where they're testing all the urine samples, but there's also a little room next door and a vent. So 95% of the place is covered by cameras. It's like Fort Knox, but also there's this 5% where you can go there with a wee sample, pass it through the wall to somebody else, and they'll give you another wee sample. So even though they've invented these bottles that you can't possibly open without this special machine, you can't open and then close, so you can't tamper with it, to just swap it out. Incredible, great documentary, highly recommend it. And the other problem is general corruption. There's a documentary on YouTube from German television called The Lord of the Lifters, and it's about this goblin man, this like 85-year-old goblin man who is in charge of the IWF, and he's basically a crime boss. I have some forensic accountants, and they work out that the way it works with the IWF is that if your lifters from your country get popped, then you owe a fine to the IWF. And if you don't want your lifters to get popped, you owe a fine to the IWF. It's amazing. Like one year, the Azerbaijani weightlifting people owe a bunch of money to the IWF, and then the next year there's no record of that being paid, and there's no record of them owing any money, so the problem sort of went away. But they also find a letter from the Azerbaijani weightlifting people saying, we think it's a bit shifty that we had to pay the fine in cash, drive it across the border and pay it directly to this goblin man. Like, oh, so there's millions and millions missing from the IWF funds. This goblin man has just got it in a bank account that he's not letting anyone have a look at. This goblin man also, for all intents and purposes, owns a testing company, you know, like USADA, that does the testing. So there's this lab that he owns, basically, you know, owns like a crime boss owns something. They're doing the testing, and he's just saying whatever he wants the results to be. It's absolutely astonishing. You know, I was just saying about them retroactively testing people. Well, in this documentary, they find one of these people who's been pushed up, and they talk to them as if they're going to set up a weightlifting camp, and they get them to admit that they were also on the drugs. And there's a bit where they have all these accountants in a boardroom with the guy, and they're like, so a lot of money's missing. Where is it? And he's like, I can't believe that you've got the audacity to ask me this. I've been running this federation for 25 years and I've never been asked something like this. I just can't answer. And they're like, okay, yeah, fair enough. It's like, what? You didn't want to follow up with, yeah, but there's money missing and this is embezzlement? And this crime syndicate that run the IWF, they obviously don't give two shits about the sport of weightlifting, because all they'd have to do to solve these problems is leave. They just have to step down. That's one of the things that the IOC wants. They want new people in charge, because this guy that is in charge has been in charge for 25 years. I feel like he was the secretary for another 25 years before that. So he's been in charge for 50 years practically, and things aren't working. There's a lot of corruption. Maybe we should try someone new. All he'd have to do to not destroy weightlifting as a sport is step down. But he's a crime boss, so he's not going to let go of his territory. And yeah, it sucks, because if weightlifting does lose its Olympic status, it's just going to become a fractured hobby sport. You know, like, and I don't mean any disrespect to powerlifting, but there are a billion powerlifting federations, so you can't directly compare this guy over there to that guy over there, because they might have slightly different rules, they might have slightly different equipment, whereas the IWF keeps everyone under the same rules on the same equipment, and you can directly compare this to that. They only exist to funnel people into the Olympics. So if they lose their Olympic status, people aren't going to just pay them money, because why would they? The only reason is to get them into the Olympics so that country can show off. That's the only reason they exist. So as soon as they lose their Olympic status, there will be no IWF. All of the people who are currently Olympic weightlifting are going to suddenly become hobbyists, which is fine, but all of the really great athletes are going to be sort of poached by other Olympic sports, because there won't be any funding for weightlifting, because it won't be an Olympic sport. I mean, our British lady who won a medal, I really don't sound like I know what I'm talking about, do I? I just have a terrible memory. I feel like she funded herself on GoFundMe or something. That's how poor the funding is already. If there was no Olympic status, certainly in our country, they're not going to fund it, which sucks, because I love the weightlifting. If the weightlifting goes, I'm just not going to watch the Olympics anymore. I don't mean that like a petulant child. I just mean I'm not really interested. Weightlifting was number one. The gymnastics is incredible, but only for like 5 minutes. It is insanely cool, but it doesn't hold my interest. Boxing is also on the chopping board. Don't really know anything about Olympic boxing, so I can't talk to you about it, but there's not really anything else that I care about very much. So that'll suck. It'll suck for me because I won't get to watch the Olympics. It'll suck for the Olympics because they'll lose a bunch of viewers, and it'll suck for weightlifters because there probably won't be a weightlifting sport, at least not as we know it now. So pretty boned, man. Step down, Goblin Man. So check out ICARUS on Netflix. That is the doping documentary. Check out Lord of the Lifters on YouTube. That is a little bit of doping, a lot of this criminal geezer, and never pay any attention to anything Men's Health say, because they suck. Have a great day. Get them gains. Be well.